for it. Welcome everybody to our 116th Learn Fast webinar since we started doing these in March of 2020. We've done a bunch of them, enjoyed ourselves a ton, learned a bunch. I know that they're being shared all over off of YouTube and being shown. I certainly have learned a ton from hosting these. And I know a lot of other people have found great value. So we're going to continue to do these and really enjoying ourselves. And speaking of the webinars and what we've done in the past, we have a co-host today that this is his third time joining us. And we've had a good time. We'll link in his first two webinars that he's done. If you're watching this live now, we'll put those into the chat box. Those of you that are watching later on YouTube, if you go down and open up the description box below, any links we talk about, anything like that will also be linked into the description box below if you're watching this later on YouTube. Okay, David is joining us today. He's been around motorsports for a good long while. I think he's a lifer at this point, right? And he has a company called DFree Trackside Service, and contact information there on the top. We'll give it to you again later. Been around this 51 years as a mechanic, of 48 years involved in motorsports. That's older than I am, right? That's I joke. And 24 years with data, and we chatted a little bit about his background, and we'll talk about that a little bit deeper in a moment, and some of the depth that he does with when he crews and when he runs these teams. He's not just the mechanic or the guy running the show or the data guy. He's doing all of this. So his experience is interesting and helpful for us, all of us, I think, to learn from, because he's using data, but it's not, he doesn't have the time to dedicate a ton to it. So because of that, some of what he does is he gets the information he needs as fast as he can in the moment, goes back a little bit later and reviews it, and then maybe even back at the hotel a little bit later and really digs in a little bit deeper. It's going to be interesting to hear his approach, because it's a lot closer to the typical racer that uses AIM devices, where that's the driver, the crew chief, the team owner, and the data guy is one person. So it'll be I think valuable for a lot of folks here. So David has been working, like I say, is wears a lot of different hats in the racing industry, and has worked in a lot of different series, including and continuing, in TransAm, MX5 Cup, S2000. I know he's got a number of those right now that he's working with, and welcome, David. We enjoy having you here, and hope you're looking forward to it.
I am. I'm a little bit nervous as always, but these are great. I've learned a ton from them. And as I said, hopefully somebody gets something out of this today.
I am confident that they will. So let's talk a little bit about how we're gonna approach this today. You had a team that you were running the operation with, and you were bringing in a new driver. I'm going to run back just really quickly to the front slide and talk about the title. It kind of tells what we're going to talk about, and then we're going to go into some detail. But new driver, tough track, getting up to speed fast using data. So that's the concept, right? We've got this brand new driver. We're going to go up to that slide we were just on a moment ago and let you kind of take off on it. But a new driver that's coming in to not only new at the track, but new in this style of car, and that we have to get him up to speed, right? And it's not just getting him up to speed in motorsports. He's an accomplished young driver, but different car, different track, different setup, different everything about it. And we're going to talk about how you did that over the course of 4 or 5 data sessions. We're going to look at some of the differences, talk about where he struggled, talk about how you handled it. It's going to be just an interesting walkthrough of using data to get up to speed. So let me jump back up to this slide and have you start to tell the story, and then we'll kind of start folding in some data work with it. So tell us about Alex and a little bit about how it all came together and why you ended up here at the fantastic Sebring facility in the series.
Yeah. Well, I was working for Roger Motorsports, TransAm, and also doing a lot of stuff in SCCA And Alex, a couple times had been garaged next to us at either New Jersey or Watkins Glen or wherever we were. And I've got to know him pretty well and his father. And the same thing. It's basically a 2-person team and very nice people. So we're at the New Jersey TransAm race, and Joey came over to look at the car, and it was like, well, at the time I was the data guy slash engine management slash you name it, but I was not crew chief. We put him in the car, and so he enjoyed what he sat in and decided, well, maybe, let's see if we can put some funding together and race it next year. So this was 16. So anyways, at the end of 16, the crew chief decided to seek opportunities outside of our team. I was the last man standing and became crew chief. So as I said, the team is based in Lexington, North Carolina. I'm just outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So we put the deal together, and we went to Sebring. Alex, as I said, is started out in quarter midgets and went to shifter carts, and now is the rule of the king of Formula 1000. For those that don't know what a Formula 1000 car is, it's basically a Formula Continental with a motorcycle motor in it, and they're actually as fast, if not faster, than Formula Atlantics. So these things honk, and he's won the pro championship. He just won it again this year. So I think he's 19, 20, and 21. He's also was the 2021 Formula 1000 champion in SCCA runoffs. So the kid's resume, and he's not a kid, but the gentleman's resume stands up. He knows how to wheel a car.
No doubt. There is no doubt about the pedigree there, right? He's got the skill, right? So now you're going to throw something, quite a bit different at him.
Yeah, he was up for the challenge. Let's put it that way. But as I said, when we get into the data and some of the conversations I've had with him, I think you get the better outlook.
Okay, let's talk about what the data is we're going to look at today, and what you threw Alex into.
Well, again, TransAm is the oldest road racing series in America. I think it started in like 65 or 66. I remember going to a race at Summit Point in 69, and that was pretty wild and kind of got me hooked on it. So anyways, these things are true race cars, 2-frame cars with 4,500 horsepower motors, very limited aero. They try to keep the costs down. So same thing, they put a cost limit on brakes and shocks and wheels, and you have to basically report everything of where the parts came from and how much they cost to tech every year. So again, these things back in 17, we had very limited data. Now you're allowed steering and a few other things, but still not enough to really do what we need to do. And again, these things are heavy. 28, 30 pounds is very heavy on small tires, very undersized tires for the car, for the amount of horsepower and weight. So it really does play a critical role in conserving tires and brakes, because you can burn the tires off in less than 2 laps. As I said, technically, these things are very restrictive. You've got to go through tech all the time, and it's a real cat and mouse game. But again, they're fun to work on. The biggest thing is about these cars is people have come from other series like NASCAR, and we've had other people from Formula Car Series, dirt track people come in, and they all seem to struggle to get a handle of these cars. So I only know one person, and that's Mr. Haley, who's now doing pretty well in NASCAR. That's actually was able to jump in one of these things and do pretty well. But most of the time, it takes more than 1 or 2 sessions to really find the handle.
Well, they've been around a while, and the not only do the teams have a very well refined, right? Very pointy on their to get the most out of them, which makes it a little harder for a driver just to jump in. A little, they've been around a while.
Mm-hmm. That is correct.
And the picture you're showing here, it is Road Atlanta, is it?
That is Road Atlanta. With Tony Avi was our driver at that point in time, which was actually the same year, 2017. So again, we've had quite a few drivers in that car. So Kurt, unfortunately, was the driver, but has got Parkinson's. So he had to step out of the seat and start putting people in.
He had driven it for a long time and had a good time. The one other thing that I see it mentioned in the chat, and I just want to make sure that we're talking about it here, is the data that we're going to review today is available for you to download. There's links that are in the chat box, or they're in the, if you're watching this later on YouTube, you can grab the data we're about to look at down below, all of the test sessions all the way up through qualifying. There's the user profiles that I'm going to use to run through the data live will be available for you. The math channels we're going to look at, and so everything is available for you. The other thing that I was going to mention, you talk about, such a well-established class, but people come in and out, and I have a good friend that we've known forever, Nick Tucker. He recently, I think he has a go-kart team that's just a very very well run that he owns and runs quite a bit in the Charlotte area, and they purchased a TA2 car and went to, I think Nashville was their first race. They had Joey Hand driving the car, and I think they just went to a second race, and it's not a struggle, but I mean they're learning, right? It's coming into that series where everybody's been running them for so long. It's always a struggle, right, to get up to speed. So perfect. That's and you mentioned 2830 on the weight. That's got to be, I'm just doing some numbers in my head, but that's virtually double the weight of the F1000 car, right?
That is correct.
Exactly.
Yeah, they weigh about 1,000 pounds.
About 1,000 pounds. There you go. Yeah. So it's more than double. So the driver's having to learn that as well. So where are we going to go look at this data at? We talked that it was Sebring. Give us a little bit about your feeling and your background with Sebring.
I will leave the grumbling to somebody else, but again, it's a concrete 17-turn racetrack. Again, it's probably one of the most world-renowned tracks out there. They run the 12 hours and a bunch of stuff, but it is a very bumpy, rough track. Again, a lot of, you have to be careful when you're looking at the data that it's not that the guy is doing something wrong, but how big of a bump did he hit? It's a flat track. And as again, it's a challenge for not only the driver, but to get the car set up. Again, we run a completely different shock and spring setup there than we do anywhere else. And as again, you miss the setup at Sebring, you're in a lot of trouble. You really start to chase your tail. So again, I love the track and I hate the track. But as I said, it is a true test of, somebody that can drive on a bumpy track and, with everything else around you and some big concrete walls that are very unforgiving. So again, it's a great place. And again, I did stay at the Holiday Inn Holiday Inn Express at Sebring.
So obviously you're going to know everything there is to know, right? We're going to see in the data as we tinkered around a little bit in the last a few days ago when we had a little bit of a pre-meeting just to chat about what we're going to chat about. The data, even though you got a great shock package and that's something that you focus on, we're going to see that it's a bumpy place, and even when you have all that optimized, the car is still a handful because it's so rough. So
that is correct.
Matt mentions in the chat box that I was mentioning my friend Nick Tucker in the 70 car that just came in. I forgot that his second event was at VIR, and his young driver that they brought up to run the thing took the pole by a ton. Very very good driver, and obviously Nick's skill and setup and understanding all that stuff was very good for them. So they're starting to get a handle on it. I look forward to watching that, how Nick does with that. So good. And I know he has AIM data in the car. We've chatted about it and helped him with some of his questions and such on that vehicle as well. So here we are. We're going to go right to, we're doing this one a little bit different because, and as the host, as somebody that puts these together and wants to work them, the ideal thing for me is to have slide captures, right? Nothing can go wrong. I just move one slide to the next. We're going to do this all with live data, so we're going to walk the tightrope a little bit and have some fun with live data. I happen to enjoy it, but it's always just a little bit more work and worry trying to make sure I push all the right buttons. So let's give an idea. I'm gonna go to the test database tab just to kind of start it that way, and maybe you can explain what we're going to look at here, and then we'll go in and start to review some data from test one and start to look at the progress of the team and the story behind what happened. But talk about the sessions we're going to look at.
Basically, we're going to look at the basically the first 5 test sessions and the qualifying session if we get enough time to get to qualifying. But again, it's mostly to see how we changed the car and how we fixed the driver to gain speed through 3 days. And again, this is amazing because we actually had this many test sessions, whereas most TransAm races, you get 2 practices, a qualifier, and a race. And again, our times of when we go out are, either early in the morning and then late at night, or, noon, or so. Not only are track conditions changing, the sun's in a different place. It's just, as I said, traffic, and the track has now gotten every kind of rubber on it known to man. So it's difficult for everybody. So we're just going to kind of walk you through from, the first time we put Alex into the car, and his progression and our progression.
And again, what's interesting about this one here, slightly different than what we normally do, is we talk a lot about technical, what button to push, how to make it, then how to read this particular corner or whatever it happens to be. We do a lot of that here, and we are going to do some of that here today. But the bigger picture is the flow, right? How did this work for you? What were you fighting? Kind of a story of a data weekend, or a motorsports weekend, but from the data perspective. So hope everybody enjoys a little bit different taste of this, but we'll throw in some interesting technical bits as we go as well. So let's bring this back up. Let's start off with, here we are, session 1, right? We're going to probably just look at the best laps, but of each session, just to make it easy. But talk a little bit about session 1, what he's up against, where he's heading out, where he kind of struggled.
Again, we kind of threw him to the lions. And again, the first 5 or 6 laps were him feeling the car out, and our radio chatter was interesting. We'll just put it that way. But trying to talk him through the car, he was trying to drive it like a Formula 1000, and was constantly, lighting the tires up, coming out of corners, and same thing, trying to learn the track. He'd been to the track, but trying to learn the track in that big car. So again, when you start to look at the data, you see that, he's doing the throttle dance. He's searching for apexes, especially in 1 and 17, and down in, turn 7, which is the hairpin. So as I said, if we look at the data, between 1000 and 2000, his braking is horrible, to say the least. He was unsure of what he was doing with the brake pedal. And so again, he's used to, as I call it, point and shoot with a formula car. Those cars stop because they don't have the weight. So you jump on the brakes, you turn in, you get to the apex, and you stand on the gas and you get out. You can't do that in a Trans-Am car. You've got to be smooth. You've got to, pick your line and go. And unfortunately, as we see in turn 1, he was unsure of the brakes. He was unsure of the apex. As I said, multiple corrections trying to get through the corner. So again, this was a learning experience that we had to deal with. And as I said, all in all, he kept the car on the track.
You know,
So
there's a couple things that when people send me data quite a bit, and we're always happy to look over it and chat with people. So I see a lot of data that I don't know anything about the driver, the car, often even the track, right? But a couple things that I noticed here really quickly with him that that showed one of them shows that he's a fairly skilled driver and is pretty good. One of the things I look for early on in the data is how consistent is the driver at running up through the gears, right? What you see is when people are overwhelmed, often they'll let's just get the gear shift done and get back to focusing on staying alive between the walls, right? If you look at this, he's we could hit on the numbers, but just visually looking at the peaks of the RPM, there's a little bit of an early shift right there, but the peaks of those are pretty consistently across the top, which tells me he's trying to get, he's skilled enough that he's going to try to get everything out of the car that he can right off the bat. The flip side of that, and probably because of the weight, you already mentioned it here in turn one, the brake pressure traces are super low in that particular one, but even this one doesn't look terrible. But then you get these points where when he's downshifting, he's lifting off of the throttle, right? Flipping the throttle, and he's lifting off the brake pressure, and it has an odd look to it, and we're going to see that until for quite a while in his data as we go. But pretty interesting that why do you think he comes here? I did something earlier. Let's see if it just fixes it. I threw together the brake pressure and the throttle, and you can tell real quickly. And just another thing that I do a lot, if we zoom in on this area, he's coming off the brake, and he's off the throttle, I should say, and he's coming onto the brake, and there's overlap. Clearly a left foot braker, right? All good, not perfectly acceptable. Just quick things you'll look at in the data to understand how he's fighting it, not fighting it, but learning it. And then you as the team manager, data guy, crew chief, you understand what he's doing, and you can you try to help him, right? So little things like that. I thought I would run through a little bit, and then the other one is looking at the lateral G's, and just a quick glimpse of looking at it. And this doesn't look terrible. I mean, you've got he's peaking up here. He's sitting there holding true, and he's going through through a chicane up here. This one, not as much, right? You can see it comes up, it releases, comes up, releases, comes up. Bumpiness, maybe, but just the things you look at really quickly by the eye.
That's correct. And the other thing is that his biggest complaint during the whole session was the understeer. And as we can look at in turn one, you can see that in a couple places, it was his use of the throttle, getting a little hard, again, the throttle dance, but also jumping on the throttle. That, again, these things have small tires compared to what they should have. And again, you get on the throttle with 500 horsepower and that car is hooked in the rear, it's going straight. It doesn't want to turn anymore. So again, that was another big learning curve for him, was again, trying to take care of the tires and kind of control your throttle.
So his feedback coming back was mainly an understeer thing. And so then you have to start thinking about, okay, do we fix the car? Do we fix the driver? And so you start looking at the data, and you're noticing that what you're calling the foot dance, right? The throttle dance. Here, you'll see it. This one, you certainly are seeing it a little bit right here, but it's also a little bit of a short shoot to a little slow down point. But the other one that you mentioned was 17 coming onto the front straight, and you certainly can see it here, right? He's trying. It wants it. No, it doesn't. It's understeering. Bet. Let's get out of it. Let's try it again. Okay, now I can give it full throttle. So any other areas there that you kind of see the same thing?
Again, 17 is the toughest turn on the track because it is one of the bumpiest. It's also decreasing radius. It's got every recipe for disaster you can get. And if you don't know the line, which when this car is completely different than a Formula car, or probably almost any other car, he was struggling in this session. And as we go along, we'll see how he progresses and gets better. But still, he struggles with turn 1 and turn 7. So as I said, we can, again, pretty much, we just need to get his braking, get his braking better, and his stop the throttle dance, stop, be a little more consistent. And as I said, just clean everything up. But as far as first sessions go, again, he brought it in with all four wheels. That's all I could ask.
There you go. And turn 7, you talk about the throttle dance. We certainly can see it in 1 and 17. The turn 7 one, he's not getting a lot of that, so he's just still trying to learn the corner, learn what it wants. He's just slow through there at that point, but it's but we'll continue to look at it. It's going to be a tough corner, obviously, as you know the results of all of this, right? So the perfect.
Oh yeah.
Perfect. So what?
It's definitely a struggle.
We've looked at this a little bit. Is there anything else you'd want to look at in this one, or you want to go to test 2 or channel reports, or where would you like to go?
I like at this point. Let's move on to the next session.
Okay, let's go to test 2.
Side light. We decided we make the car a little safer for him, so we added a little more toe out to make the car turn a little better, and a little more camber in the right front. So same thing to get the tire down on it. And we put a little softer spring rubbers in the rear, just to kind of, again, same thing, help them with the throttle understeer and try to get the car to, turn better and hook up. So again.
And before we go, just so everybody can see that he went from a 214 in test 1 to a 212, right? 212.6. 14.0 to a 212.6. So that gives you an idea that, okay, there is some improvement we're looking at in lap time here. Let's take a look at the data and see if we could compare to test 1, but we're just taking the bigger view as we kind of chat our way through here.
Yeah. So as you see, back in turn 1, the braking is still not consistent.
Yeah. Really bad. Much worse, actually, at some level, right?
Exactly. But the rest of the track, as you go through the rest of the track, you can see that his braking is getting better. Is getting a little more consistent. The throttle dances are still there, but a little more, I guess, more for downshifting and stuff. He's cleaning up the downshifting and the braking, which is was a lot of his in session 1. So he's like I said, getting used to the car. Figuring out how wide this thing is. I mean, it is a bus. So again, he went 2 seconds faster. So the talk on the radio was the understeer was gone, but late in the session, he said it started to oversteer. So again, when we brought him in, we checked the tire pressures, and he had ballooned the tires up by about 4 pounds over what they needed to be. So we bled the tires down, and as I said, the car came back. But again, the lesson learned is you've got to take care of not only the brakes, but the tires. The other thing was that I forgot to remind him to turn the brake blowers on. So he started to get a little bit of a mushy pedal. And the brake blowers on these cars do 2 things. One, cool the brakes, but the other thing is it gets the air off the splitter. So again, to help the nose stay down. So it's as I said, what we have, we use.
Are the brake coolers just on the front axle, or are they on the back as well?
Yes, we have. We just have blowers in the front, but rears we have pretty large ducts.
Hoses straight to them. Okay.
So yeah, NACA ducts out the windows and stuff. So yeah. And again, the biggest thing in these cars is we run usually neutral 50-50 brakes. And as the fuel burns off, you start to wind more rear brake into the car. So you'll end up at the end of a, 15 or 20 lap will burn 20 gallons of fuel or 25 gallons of fuel, but you'll end up start with a half a turn front bias and end up with almost 2 to 3 turns towards the rear towards the end of it. So again, there's a whole lot going on in these cars.
So the changes you made here were mostly chassis stuff. It sounds like you didn't. You're leaving the shocks alone, and sway anti-sway bars and some of those things. You're just trying to get a more forward bite and side bite with some suspension changes.
Yeah, okay. You got it. So again,
tire pressures.
Yeah. Again, as you see, he's starting to clean up some of the places, but he's still struggling with turn 1 and still struggling with turn 17. He's a little bit better through the hairpin.
Much better there. The thing that jumps out at me, and the thing that jumps out to me the most that is an area for huge improvement to me is the braking. He's probably trying harder. He's almost 2 seconds faster, right?
Right.
So he's being a little bit more aggressive, and with that, his feet are especially on the braking side, is the last thing that's catching up. It looks like he's if you start to look at these blips on the throttle coming down, you can see that it is often corresponding with a lack of brake pressure, right? Where he's throttling up, he's actually coming off the brake as he does it, and you can see these brake pressure changes. There's a huge one here when he hit the throttle quite a bit coming down here. He got almost down to 0 psi on the braking under a big braking zone, right, coming into 17. So you can even see it in the speed trace. The one of the things that I seen in the chat earlier, I'm gonna scroll back up. David Arkin mentions that the F1000 car he was driving did all the work for him. It had an auto blipper, the throttle's cut. I think you even said paddle shifters. So you're throwing a lot at this young guy that's trying to get a feel of it.
And these transmissions are again, you really got to get close with the revs, or they won't go in, or a lot of times they will break a gear. So again, his learning curve is still straight up. So,
and the lateral G's, we're getting decent, maybe some peaks that are decent, but there's a whole lot of releasing going on at certain points, right?
Yeah.
And that's also not going to help the handling. I mean, look at here in 17, he turned in, and then even when he's releasing the brakes and running down through the gear, you can see he's actually releasing lateral as well. The G sum would not look pretty in this corner, right?
Exactly.
Yet. So
it's, again, that's 17's a toughie, and again, there's that one little down jolt is probably hit the big bump halfway through the corner. That's again, he's trying to stay off the wall, so everybody turns in a little closer there and hits that big bump there, which actually makes it worse because then you bounce out towards the wall. So it's unnerving. But again, it's learning the track and learning the car.
And David, I see by your comment there, I did not take it as a harsh comment. I took it as an instructive comment. It's helping us understand why he's going through what he's going through. So no, it was not taken. It was taken, I think, in the manner that you meant it. So all good. Okay. Anything else you'd like to chat about too? We're going to come back and actually stack a lot of these on top of each other here towards the end. So if you guys are wishing to compare some data, we're going to do a little bit of that here in a couple of minutes.
So anyways, just again, unfortunately, we had to go through tech after this. So again, our comments to the driver, the driver coaching part after this session is, emphasizing easier on the throttle, and consistent turn ins, and again, save the tires. We ended up having to raise the car a whole turn all the way around in order to make height. We had to adjust the rear fenders out because we adjusted them in to get them out of the air. Again, playing with the aero, trying to get as much less drag as possible. And then again, we had to adjust the rear wing to make it legal. They wanted us to add a little more wing to it to slow us down a little bit or whatever. But again, we had to follow the rules. So we'll head out and do the third session.
Your task as running the adjustments and looking at the data is interrupted there for a moment, right? You had to make some changes that you weren't exactly planning for.
Exactly. And throw in there that the SCCA loves to have meetings. I don't know what it is, but like an hour before we go out on track, they always seem to say, well, geez, let's have a meeting. And it's like, so, and we're a small team. As I said, at this point, we have, a tire guy and then another guy that's, our fabricator, truck driver, you name it, he does it, the owner and I. And again, this weekend, we had Alex's dad, Nick. So he was kind of filling in all the places that we hadn't hired somebody to do yet. Because again, our last year's truck driver, he had a problem with his family, so he wasn't going to come back until probably middle part of the year, and he ended up not coming back. So as I said, this was, we were undermanned. And as I said, I constantly ran around with my hair on fire. So,
Hey, you talk about Arrow and they're watching, in the series watching things. I mean, it's 152 miles an hour at the end of the back straight, coming into 17 here. So I mean, there is some speed there. Arrow is something you would want to do your best to get the car to be as efficient as possible.
that is correct.
Lifting at a full turn at Sebring may not be a terrible choice anyway, right? Getting a little bit more wheel travel and you might not be terrible idea.
No.
Okay, so let's get rid of test 2. So we turned to 212.6, and then what we're going to look at real quickly is 311.5. So he went another, another second, 1.1 seconds faster. So that's not too bad. And this is a new day. Let me bring that back up real quickly just to show it again. The first 2 tests were on Thursday. The first 2 sessions. The next 2 sessions were on Friday, and then the 2 after that were Saturday. So there was these time elements where you're being able to think some things through and make some changes. So we're back the next day to look at the ones that we're about to look at. Okay, here's the best lap from Friday morning's first session.
So again, you kind of look at this, and again, he's gotten better on the braking. Still not getting as hard as I'd like to get, but the good news is he's getting on and getting off the brakes in some places. And as I said, his throttle dance has gotten a lot better, but still struggling in turn 1. And he's getting better. As I said, he's getting the feel. And again, this was about, if memory serves me, I believe it was like 8:30 in the morning, and it was kind of a crisp morning. So I give him a lot of credit for, we're only the second group out, I believe. So, and it was an SVRA weekend. So again, different track conditions, and he's still going faster. So we're heading in the right direction. As I said, 17, he's still, as you can see, trying to muddle his way through. That's a tough turn, but as I said, he's getting better.
Yeah, you can see that that dip there in the lateral G's is still there. We're going to see it every time it turns out that there's a ditch there, you're jumping, and when you're in the air that you're not creating lateral G's, right? So
that is correct.
We'll continue to look at that. I'm with you. I mean, the throttle, there is just a little bit of that still. He's trying to pick it up, but way better there. There. Look at all of the throttle areas where he's picking it up. Only turn 1 and turn 17 are the only ones where he's still trying to beat the car. Trying to get there before the car is really ready.
Exactly, and he's trying hard. And again, radio conversation is making sure he's dialing his brake back to the rear. And again, somebody had a comment that it doesn't make sense. Well, problem is that now you're we've got this huge V8 motor up front. And as I said, if you keep dialing in more front, you overheat the brakes and then the brakes go away. So again, the reason why we dial it back is to keep from burning the brakes up. And also the brakes in the front will get so hot that it'll actually melt the bead on the tires. And then when you go to hit the brakes, the tire actually spins on the rim, which is never a good thing. So again, there's your answer. Hopefully it helps. As I said, so constantly reminding him to dial the brakes back, and again, constantly beating into his head to take care of your brakes and your tires, because those tires will go off and you'll have to take 2 or 3 laps off to get them to come back. And by that point in time, everybody's gone. So there you have it.
His braking, the shape of the brake is really, really coming around, right? You already mentioned it, but I just wanted to reiterate. This one's a little bit of a strange look to it, but he's getting the pressure built up and then starting to come off it as he's turning in. There's a little bit of one. Certainly there's still some humps and weirdness, but they're starting to become more shaped correctly. Bruce asked a question in the Q&A box that I think is interesting, and that I've been asked this outside of these a couple of times, and I'll give a quick answer. Then you let us know what you think too, as well, David. His question is what front brake pressure are you looking for, as in a number, right? We've got this scaled 0 to 800 here. This is a dangerous thing because depending on where you put the pressure sensor, the size of the master cylinders, the size of the clamping force on the brakes, the pressure can vary and be nonsensical. I mean, I've seen some cars that are, always in the 1800 PSI range because of the way that they've got their sensors set up in the brake system. So what we really look for as data guys is the shape, right?
That's correct.
What are you getting out of it? John Block did a webinar with us a while back where he talked about braking, and he went through the math of where the pressure sensor was versus the master cylinder size, the clamping force, and all of the things to get a true number. But in reality for us, and David, you can add to this now, but it's really about the shape and that they're all even or more or less even, and the shape is right is really what we're looking for.
Again, on these cars, you get up over 750 or so. One, you're creating an immense amount of heat, and two, you'll end up locking the brake. So what he's doing at about around 600 psi is a good place to be. 650, somewhere in there, because you start again going over that, the chances of locking and overheating the brakes is a lot greater. So again, as Roger said, I'd rather see consistency than, and the nice humps than pressure.
And he's lucky to have a guy like you running the team that has had other drivers in this same exact car. So you have this basic idea of what the pressure ought to be just before lockup and just before you start to create these temperatures. And so he's got that from you to help him a little bit as well.
Yeah. And again, throw in the small tires. Yeah. You can burn the tires up in a hurry under braking. So anyways, there you have it.
And over here in the GPS map, just since we've been showing it for location as much as anything, but I do have it colorized under brake pressure. So keep your eye on these things as we've been going along, and you can see, that really right here, maybe right here are the two spots that are as high as anywhere. Of course, they correspond with the squiggly lines. But if you're looking at this map, that's what the colorization is I've colorized it on brake pressure, front brake pressure. Okay. Anything else that you see here that you'd like to chat about before we go, take this one away and go to test number 4?
Again, at this point, the same thing. We decided that the same thing. We wanted to try a few things to make the car a little more comfortable. And on our cars, you're able to move the shocks in and out on the rear. Again, basically to change a little bit of shock travel and keep the same, but keep. I just lost my train of thought. But anyways, we moved the shocks out a little bit, and we also added a little more camber in the right front because the tire temperatures let us do that. So again, let's move on to
when you're moving the shocks out, you move the bottom out on the rear end. Is that what? So
That's
you're getting
correct.
more leverage against the same amount of movement. The shock is doing more work there.
That's correct.
Okay, perfect. And are they coil spring on the shock?
I'm sorry?
Are they coil spring on the shock?
That's correct.
Okay, so you're even changing the spring rates a little bit as well as the shocking, so it should control the rear end better for what, and maybe not a bad thing for Sebring, right?
Yes, we wanted to get as I said, get as much travel as possible to overcome some of the braking. So, and I should say the bouncing. So, but you can never get rid of all of it there.
Yeah, no. Okay, that was 3, and he turned a 2:11.5 or 11.5. He's going to come back. You're going to make a few changes. You're going to talk about those before we get going here, but virtually the same lap time. But let's see if so let's take a look at visually and talk about your notes and what kind of changes that you saw.
Again, the biggest thing is that this test was later in the day. It was pretty warm and pretty humid. So again, the track changed greatly from the morning. So again, this was quite the. We ended up going a lot that kept up with the fast boys. Let's put it that way.
Everybody else slowed down, and you held the same speed. It sounds like
exactly. So we're pretty happy with our turnout. As we start looking at the data, same thing. You start to see his braking's getting really good.
Yeah.
His going through turn 1 has gotten better. Same thing. He's at least only one minor correction and so on. So, and he's able to, again, the throttle dance is almost done.
Yeah, looking very, very good there.
Yeah. So there he had a little moment.
No, not bad.
So again, I think he added a little too much throttle and car stepped out a little bit. So he had to make that correction.
One of those things you can kind of see that in, by the way, you know, from some,
right
let's say you don't have a
Whoops.
wheel speed sensor, but when you've got the RPM connected, when you start to see, you know, these bumps that are starting to happen, right? You're starting to spin the rear tire just a little bit. So he got back to full throttle. Let's get that out of the way. He got back to full throttle. He's coming up, and then it was right on the edge, right? You know, he's still lateraled, you know, a lot of lateral G there as he's starting to transition, and it spun the tires just a little bit. So.
And again, Alex is not afraid.
There you go. There you go.
He is definitely not afraid. And same thing, you know, the whole time he's out, you really got to keep talking him down because he just wants to go faster. And again, the last thing you want is to hear that the tires are gone. And then you start to see him slipping and sliding. So you got to keep it into his head. You got to keep him, you know, the blowers on, you know, brake bias, all that stuff. It's a lot to these cars. And I try not to talk much because the driver's trying to do what his thing is. So as I said, as you see, he's cleaned up a lot. I feel he's making great progress. 17's even looking better.
Yeah.
You know, the hairpins look much better. He's carrying a lot more speed through 7. So again, he's getting there. So it's you know, there's happiness in Mudville.
Yeah, there's a question here that why are you not looking at steering angle trace? It would be ideal. It's not there, right?
Yeah. We don't have one.
We don't have one. Mentioned early that this particular car didn't have. Right. It was missing a few sensors. We might have really wanted steering being one of them, but so it is what it is, right? We deal with. We got what we got.
As I said, the GA2 is very limited in what you're allowed to have as far as data. At least in 17. Each year they keep trying to get a little better. I still like to see shock pots on these cars, but at least now they're allowed the steering and, you know, 2 brake sensors, and, you know, they're starting to come into the 21st century. But again, they're trying to slow the progress back so that, you know, hey, to keep it affordable. You know, I mean, it's an oxymoron, you know, cheap racing. But as far as the bang for the buck, TransAm 2 is probably one of the best series going.
No doubt.
It's just wonderful.
No doubt about that. You of course, the shock guy would like to have shock sensors. I had to throw that in there a little bit. You talked about, and I just want to get your feeling on this, and maybe some of those of you that are watching this live and throw me a note out here into the question and answer. We talk about understeer that he's fighting in this car the entire time, right? And while you're fixing it, and he's fixing it a little bit here and there, that the brake pressure traces look to me like he probably certainly is some driver induced, no matter how you look at it. But the brake traces, he pounds the brake, all good, right? You get up to that maximum pressure right away, all good. Stand the car up on its nose, get it to start slow down. But his release is very reminiscent of a lightweight car driver with a lot of tire, right? That shifter cart or the F1000s. And whenever you drop the pressure off like this, and I was waiting for later sessions to see if it kind of cleaned itself up. It's a little bit better on this corner, but when you drop that out like crazy, you've got the thing stood up on its nose, and then all of a sudden you just dump the pressure off. All of a sudden the front tires don't have the grip that they should have because all it's transferred all the weight in a hurry to off the front end. What is your thought about that? Anybody else in the comments?
I'd like to see less, or, you know, getting off the brakes faster, especially in this car, because again, those calipers build up heat so fast that, you know, again, you are correct. He's still a Formula 1000 driver that's trying to make the transition.
And still struggling occasionally on that dipping off on when he's blipping the throttle, right?
Yes.
But I still think there is that extra heat's being built up the way he's doing it, but also if he was to bring the brake pressure up and then bleed it off, right,
Yes.
and a little bit, have just a little bit of brake a little bit later into the corner and a little bit less braking early, you would end up with a lot less weight transfer and pulling the weight up off the front tires. So okay, anything else that you see on this one that you'd like to chat about? We're
It's
we're going to be able to look at the next one and then probably have to stack them and get ready to end
yeah.
this.
Well, if I can we miss session 4 and go to session 5 just
Yeah,
because
let's do it. Session 5.
Yeah.
Let me throw out some lap times here. This is the first time we've seen a backward step, right? So so now we're overnight. Saturday morning shows up, and we ran a 2:11.5 and 11.5 the night before, both sessions the day before, and now a 12.9. I mean, lost a substantial amount of time. So let's bring it up and let's take a look and have you tell us the story about what happens.
Well, as in everybody's life, we made more changes than we should, and we went the wrong direction.
Took a big swing.
It was not good. As I said, same thing. This was early in the morning, Saturday morning. The track was a little slippery, and we went wrong. We changed springs, we changed gear. Yeah, again, we made too many changes. And as you start to look at the data, you can see that he's hanging on the brakes. He's doing more brake than he did.
Yeah.
The throttle dance is coming back. His G's are a lot less than what they ever were. And the complete car was so loose and uncomfortable. The only good news in all of this was we brought him in to, again, to bleed tires down. And when he went to leave, it broke the drive shaft. So when I was on the radio, I basically told him, thank you for not wrecking the car, and apologize for how badly the car was. So we ended up, basically going back to the setup we had that went fast. But as you see, this is not the driver. This is the car. And this is, as I said, if you just looked at this data, you would think, oh my God, does this guy know how to drive, or what happened? Did he, not wake up or whatever? But as I said, this is a prime example of a bad car.
Yeah, and we got some areas here where he's this big long sweeper. I've been watching the data as we've been looking at it, and he's able to get closer and closer to running flat through there. And there is a huge difference in his ability to roll through that. He is backing out, almost totally out of it, right?
Yep.
To get through there this particular time. So interesting. Sometimes those things happen, right? You take the big swing and a swing and a miss, right?
Yeah, we struck out big.
It happens.
Again, the good news is that he didn't wreck the car, which is everything. So again, we were able to fix everything that was wrong with drive shaft, and put everything back together again, and got it ready for qualifying.
Two good things. Number one, you didn't wreck the car. I agree with that. But the other one was you even when you make the mistake and you make some changes and go a certain way, now you at least know that's not the right way, right? So you can actually back that up and go the other way on some of those things, and it's not an invaluable thing. There's value there. So
yeah, it's unfortunate we wasted a session because he needed all the track time he could get. And
good track time, right? not
good track time.
Not getting scared.
Luckily, that session only lasted about 5 laps. So
yeah, there you go. And it was the last session before qualifying. So qualifying comes. Now we're talking about 7 hours later in the day. Of course, again, they split that up quite a bit, and boom, all of a sudden a 2:10.9, right? So we're about to look at his best data of the weekend. And give us an idea of why that happened.
Again, track conditions were pretty good. We made not only did we put the car back, but we also dialed in a little more rear rebound to, again, try to keep the rear end hooked up, slow the transfer to the front. And again, for the late session understeer, late session oversteer, and try to keep the rear tires from, getting overheated. So more for his liking. So as we see in this session, he's actually got turn one down pretty well, which is the first time all weekend he finally was able to carry a lot of speed through there. No major changes. A little bit of wheel spin here coming out, so that was good. Again, I think that he got a chance to follow somebody, one of the fast guys, and was able to hang on to him for a little bit to see the way through. So again, he cleaned up a lot. His braking kind of had a little moments of trying to think of the word, but help.
Yeah, he's getting better. There's still work to do on the braking side, but he's getting better. And look at the color chart over here on the with the strip charts. I'm starting to see some orange and even some red, right? So he's maybe it's too much, maybe it's not, but it's the scaling is such. He really has started to really drive it into the hairpin, pretty hard, and that looks pretty good. You may be creating some heat, but that's starting to look pretty good to me. The size, the shape, there's a very, very poor one coming in here into 13, right? Look at the brake pressure there. Every time he blipped the throttle, his left foot reacted. It's just something he has to get better at, right? Plus he hit the brakes and then it fell off to almost nothing while he was doing that. I mean, he was rolling into the corner in effect. So there was some room for improvement there still.
Yep, but you can see where he hit the bumps, and but at least he's finally. I believe if we overlap the traces, you'll see that this final thing he's actually got. He's pretty much got it down.
We're getting pretty close on time, so let's throw all of them on top of each other and let's look for some things. And I'm gonna Kyle has a question there, and we'll hit on Harry's real quickly because and then I do want to get to Kyle's. There, one of them was Kyle, where I do have a segment report that we may look at real quickly here in just a second. But yeah, he was doing it, but we were going to focus on the story of the process here instead of actually digging in there. I don't think there was any video. There may have been some GoPro video, but no, I didn't see any SmartyCam video at least.
They have their own cameras.
Okay.
And even though I have to tell you the end of the story of this, we got wrecked in the 5th lap of the race, and I still to this day have only watched the video once.
Can't take it.
Yeah, but we did have video, but again, it's a completely different camera source that we can't do much with. But as I said, I don't rely a whole lot on video, and I really do like to see tire temps, tire pressures, download the driver right after the session, and again, look at data. I'm an old guy, so
different people do different things. Yep, different people do different things.
Yeah, I'm getting there with the video thing. I'm starting to watch it. I used to kid people years ago that if I wanted to watch real racing, I'll put Le Mans on or Grand Prix. Why do I need to look at this? So
they have much bigger cameras. There's a couple things here that we have talked about as the entire session has gone on. One of them was 17 and the bumps, right? And I'm going to zoom in just a little bit so we can kind of see it. I'm going to pull this off to the side. Look at the lateral G's. That's what we're looking at here. And the build up, the holding it for a while and then building up again. He was very, very consistent at that. This might be an area that he could work with, right? Correct. But it's as he's coming off the brake. So there's some trail brake happening here. That might be a normal thing. We'd have to dig in. But we've talked about this zigzag in the lateral G several times on several laps, and it's there every single lap. And you've already made mention of it, that there's a huge bump there, right? So what I thought was interesting is we're going to zoom in and bring that corner up and look at the difference of his line as the weekend kind of went on, right? We started off with the green, this green one here was test one, right? Kind of driving in a very, very early entry and then just whacking the bumps all the way through, right? Hitting the most of them and all the way through to the pink one. and maybe we change that to one to a bright yellow to make it just stand out a little bit more. Wait, and turn and pull it down to the inside of some of those bumps, right? There's some and the yellow one actually is a little bit different than that. Let's change that yellow one here to a different color just to make sure. There's your yellow one is now hidden in there, but pretty early. And then as he comes around here and then frees it up and misses obviously the big bump. You can see where the big bumps were. He was missing them, sometimes going inside, sometimes going outside, right?
Yep.
So interesting evolution of the driving line as he was learning it through the weekend. The one other thing, we're kind of up against the time, and it's as much because I chatted as much as I did. But one of the things I get a lot of questions, and I wanted to hit it here real quickly, was when you see this, some people will immediately go to the technology and begin to wonder, is that GPS traces, that driven line trace in our GPS map, is that truly what the driver did, or is there a technology problem here, right? Is there some shift in the GPS over these 3 days? And I just wanted to cover real quickly, because this was a beautiful example of how to get comfortable that was the driver doing that and not the technology, not the GPS degrading or some sort of a shift in the data. So if you see something like this, just immediately go pull out and start to look at okay, well, turn one's got some changes, right? Yeah, okay, but maybe that's still the driver. Start to look at some other corners and see if where the driver may have placed the car all the time. I mean, look down here in the hairpin where the track is very narrow and it's very much a one-line track. You can see that these are laying on top of each other all the way to where you might start separating in the big sweeper. That brings me great peace that this line change here is actual driven line change by the driver. Just one of those things that if you feel sometimes that your GPS is not looking very well, take a little bit of time and compare the entire track. What I like to do is compare north, south, east, and west. If you're ever off on your data, it's not going to be, it's not going to be longer in one direction. The whole track is going to shift one way or the other. So if I see that there's that pink line right there, and I think it's off, I would see a corresponding it being off over here, the same direction, and up here the same direction, and up here the same direction. If you're not seeing that, it's probably the driver changing the line of where he placed the car. Okay,
I learned something.
Well, it's just a good way of double checking your technology, right? Okay, and anything else you see here in the data? There, we talked about the speed through this one corner, right, and where he was starting to get this thing under control until that one really bad session, right? Test 5 is this blue one. So there's your comfort level of him getting up to speed and almost running it flat in the in some of those, and qualifying. The yellow one is flat all the way across it, right? New tires. Harry asked how many tire sets are you allowed for weekend. Don't remember that. You may remember, but certainly he put on new tires for qualifying.
You qualify, and then you have to run what you qualify on the race. So again, we try again. We put new tires on first day we were there to give them the best opportunity to learn the track and so on. And then same thing, we put new tires on Saturday morning, just so he'd get a good feeling for when we put new tires on in the afternoon, to qualify. And unfortunately, as I said, we missed the setup. So kind of a waste of tires, waste of equipment. So happens.
And then we are out of time, but I did want to go and you also do a lot of work with channel reports. So I built a profile. You have everybody, if you want to download it, the links have been placed into the chat box, and there will be in the description of the YouTube box below. But if we do a test compare of all of his different laps, there's a couple things that jumped out at you One of them was you start to look at this distance traveled per lap, and you get a good idea of how consistent the driver is. And then the other thing you do is not just look at squiggly lines, but you actually are looking at, the lateral G's that the car is able to create. Longitudinal is the braking side or brake pressure. Here's his max brake pressures. Channel reports, just a very, very powerful tool of understanding and getting some good information very quickly. Okay.
One of the first places I go.
Exactly. And I do it a lot too. And I use it a lot for the vehicle health stuff. I'll have a channel report for maybe it's this braking and percent of throttle and some other things. But I have one that I'll usually start off with, channel report health. And it's got my oil pressures and battery voltages and water temperatures. And I look at that real quickly and then bring up and then start digging into the driver side of helping. So, okay. Perfect. I think we're just pretty much out of time. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we kind of jump out of the data here, David?
I think we've pretty much hammered it home.
Okay.
As I said, you guys will kind of get a grip of what happens in a race weekend. I'm sure all of you had those days. And as I said, hopefully this helps in organizing your weekend.
We again, as I talked about as we started, we do talk about button pushing, how to set up a dialog box and how to configure or calibrate a sensor, whatever it happens to be. But the walking through a weekend of data, I thought might be interesting. We did have a split report that was built, and could have chatted about that. Another area that we obviously will occasionally go to, and we've talked about how to split up maps and why you might want a few less splits, something like this, all sorts of different thought processes. But the data is available to you. If you want to take a look at it, you can take a look at the different channel reports and split reports we did with the Race Studio 2 user profiles that have been shared with you as well to set yours up to look just like this one. So, okay, let's jump out of that. Let's jump back into this. And there's a couple of questions in there. Let's just get to those in a quick second. We'll go over them real fast. All of our videos, all of our YouTube our webinars are shared to YouTube as soon as I can get them up there. Takes an hour or two to get through the YouTube process and get them up there. But we currently have 181 videos up there. Again, this is our 116th webinar. Go ahead and visit that site, not only for the webinars, but also of course, the lots of other videos that are up there as well. I've tried to start numbering these in a way that we started with number one, season one, number one, and we're up to 2-42, and those are part of the heading in the naming structure in YouTube. Makes them a little easier for you to figure out exactly when they happens if you're trying to look for something. So keep that in mind as you look through. We're out there working with you. Please, if you have any questions, give our guys a call, give me a call, give David a call. At AIM, we've got a phone number there. You can, or you can just drop us an email note, contact me, making sure that you get the most out of this software and hardware that you've invested into. So make sure you give us a holler if you have any problems. The next week will be a good one. The Race Studio 3, there has been a bunch of work going on in the background. There is there was a pretty good upgrade. Gosh, I think 3 or 4 weeks ago, available to you in the beta Race Studio 3 analysis beta software, and I think we're going to have another pretty good size beta update coming in the next week or two. But Emiliano is going to come back and join us. And we're going to talk about all the changes that have been made, all the bug fixes, enhancements that have been done, and what he's working on, and maybe even get a little bit of a timeline, get an idea of when we might be pushing it and closer to production all the time. So join us a week from today, the 26th of October, and Emiliano will be joining us again, and we will talk through Race Studio 3 analysis and get an update on that. So that'll be fun. Contact information, there's an email address for David if you're interested in chatting with him about some of the stuff he talked about today, or his shock program, or any of those things. Give David a call, an email. He did one video, and I know it's been linked in the chat, and it'll be linked down below. One of my favorite webinars we've done in the past, both of what David did were very, very good. The last one he did, though, was all about sensors and mounting and understanding the sensors and getting them on the car right and all that. That has been a very, very popular webinar that I've gotten a lot of good feedback on. So take a look at that one if you haven't seen that one. Perfect. So David, anything else you'd kind of like to add as we kind of close this one up for the day?
I just want to thank everybody at AIM, and Roger, thank you for inviting me. I mean, this is, as I said, quite the honor. I'm feel I'm in a special group, I guess, or whatever, but I really get a kick out of these things. And I watch every one of these things and the webinars, because there's always something to learn. And again, it's wonderful. And again, thank you for the opportunity.
You're very, very welcome. We enjoy having you here every time that you come. It's been a good time, and we look forward to having you again in the future. A couple of questions I want to just cover really quickly that were in here. We may not be able to get an answer for them, but one of them covers the idea of different firmwares on the GPS, back when I was talking about looking at the GPS and being able to visually see where you might see some differences or see a problem or become comfortable with it. He asks about different firmware updates and would that change anything? There are different eras of hardware. That's probably a bigger difference than the changes of the firmware. And we just keep getting better and better and better GPS sensors that we're using. Of course, the firmware makes it better and the software is better use of it. But I have not found that changing a firmware will never not degrade it. If anything, it'll just keep getting better, and we can't hardly ask for anything more than that. So I don't think that's as much of a problem. Edgar asks, how do you identify understeer behavior with the data? Do you look for sudden decrease in speed? I think that's a good topic for us to talk about a little bit. I think one of the webinars we did a little bit, if you're turning in and you actually turn the steering wheel and you see your lateral G's build and your speed kind of go flat, and then all of a sudden the lateral G's build a little bit more, it's almost always an understeer that's fixing itself just by dragging the speed out of it, right? You'll start to get some more grip when the front tires finally stop slipping. So a build of G's late is almost always an understeer. It certainly can be different than that, but that's a general statement. And if you have a big build in G's early, you've turned it in and it built up G's, and then all of a sudden it started to fall off, and that was on the early part of the lateral G's, often that will be an oversteer. When you only have a solo or something that only has GPS channels, that's a decent way of looking at it. The other one was, we talked about it a little bit today, is start looking at the RPM. If you have an RPM channel, whenever you start to see that RPM coming up off the corner, you can tell real quickly if it's an oversteer, throttle on oversteer kind of a deal as well. I think we talk about that one maybe a little bit deeper in another webinar. That might be a really good future webinar. Okay. Thank you, Edgar, for that question. Perfect. I appreciate it, everybody. Let's go ahead and close this one down. Looking forward to next week with Emiliano joining us on Race Studio 3 Beta. That will be fun. Thanks, everybody, for coming. Everybody have a great week. Enjoy your, hopefully, your race weekends. It's getting late in the year. Hopefully, everybody's having a good time, and we will see you all here next Tuesday.
Thank you.
Thank you.